Since Google's release of their A series phones in 2019, starting with the Pixel 3a, it's quickly become one of their most anticipated phone releases each year. And this year's release of the Pixel 6a is no different. Personally, I've been using the 6a for over a month, and there's a ton of great features that are worth mentioning, especially at $450. But there's still a few shortfalls and a few things that I think Google could have shoved into this phone. One of its most notable hits is the design. It's incredibly done. Even though it's mostly a copy of the more expensive Pixel 6 with just a smaller size, I still loved it. I've said it before and I'll say it again, this design is a great representation of Google. It's unique, not afraid to stand up from the crowd, and fairly sized for anyone to use. It's just using more budget-friendly material. For example, instead of having a glass back or aluminum buttons, like on the Pixel 6, it's all plastic. Plastic for the entire back, most of the camera bar, and even the volume rocker and power key, which on a different note, were still satisfyingly tactile and clicky. But anyways, this type of plastic still felt premium, and I almost mistook it for glass at the beginning. The only thing that isn't plastic besides the front panel are surprisingly the sides of the phone, which are made out of aluminum. That's one of the biggest reasons why this phone doesn't feel so cheap, and I felt more confident when carrying it around, especially considering that the size of the phone isn't obnoxiously big. If I accidentally dropped it, I know it would be okay. And in the month that I've been using the phone, it hasn't really gotten any damage, even though I've dropped it twice. It's a fantastic design from Google all around. As is expected from a Google Pixel is great cameras, and the 6a is no exception. It's another hit from Google that closely mirrors its older siblings, mostly because it's carrying the same camera hardware. It has the same wide-angle sensor that is found within the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro, but it's still stuck with the same main lens used in the older Pixel 5a. Their trusty old 12 megapixel Sony sensor that they've been using since the Pixel 2, you know, the one way back in 2017. It's not a huge deal though, because it does help bring that price tag down, and with Google having some of the best camera processing algorithms, the quality of most of the pictures that I took were still substantial. In great lighting conditions, these shots look nearly identical to anything that the Pixel 6 was capable of. It provided great color accuracy, solid exposure, decent contrast, and very sharp detail. It was only when you reached night sight photography that the more expensive Pixel 6 and 6 Pro had a much more obviously better picture quality. The bigger flagships just have that upgraded larger sensor that allows for more light to be let in. Still, that's not to say that the 6a did a horrible job at night. I still found the shots to be detailed and bright enough to see what was occurring. I also can't say that I missed the telephoto lens. Sure, it would have been nice to get sharper shots when zooming in, but Google's Super Res Zoom feature already did a decent job at enhancing digitally zoomed in shots, so no complaints there. What I did miss having though was the new camera mode that came with the Pixel 6 series known as Motion. It's the mode that lets me add creative blur to the background of a subject to make it look like it's moving, or just to make it look more eye-catching, like a waterfall. Bringing this to the Pixel 6a would have not cost Google anything, so I'm not sure why they left it out. When shooting video, I was much more satisfied with the 6a than the 5a. I remember that the 5a had a bad habit of overheating in just under 6 minutes when recording in 4K at 60 FPS. Now the 6a can do a bit better by only overheating when reaching the 12-minute mark. Still, it's better, and it's got fantastic quality and has great stabilization. Just expect that it may slow down the footage or just stop recording when being in the hot sun. And finally, for the front camera, it's the same one as last year at 8 megapixels. So I didn't get incredible detailed selfies still, but they were decent enough when I wanted to use Snapchat. The best selling point about the 6a is definitely the software. I mean, if someone came up to me and asked me why I'd recommend this phone over the competition, I'd tell them it's because the Pixel experience is hard to overlook. Sure, there's always a few bugs and complaints with any phone that gets released, especially the Pixels, but the 6a was no exception to that rule, and usually most of those bugs get ironed out in a few months, and afterward, you'll have a pleasant experience. Even better than most Androids, since the Pixel exclusive features are really mind-blowing. I found great use with AI-powered features like Direct My Call, which lets me see automated menus whenever I call business, or wait times, which will show me how busy a customer support line will be and how long I can expect it to be on hold. There's of course the Magic Eraser tool, which gets rid of unwanted objects within a photo. Live Translate, which automatically translates any foreign conversations into my primary chosen language. some extra beautiful Google widgets that no other Androids have, like the weather or battery widget, and these beautiful wallpapers. Nah, I'm just kidding. These are Pixel inspired walls that we created, and they look absolutely phenomenal, especially on this Pixel 6a, only on my Patreon. Overall, there are so many more Pixel exclusive features. That was just a tip of the iceberg. As a matter of fact, I did make a video on that, reviewing my top 15 favorites a few months back, so if you're interested in watching that, make sure to click the eye in the top right corner. But the best part about all this is the Pixels are still the champs when it comes to software updates on the Android side. They're always first in line for any major Android OS update, including Android 13, which has been running pleasantly on the 6a. Plus, every 3 months or so, Google releases feature drop updates to keep the software playful and fun with new features to try out. No other OEM does this. On top of that, Google promises 5 years of security updates, which is phenomenal, but where they did fall a bit short is with the OS updates. I haven't heard too many sources talking about this, but the 6a is still only promising 3 years of OS updates. Pretty sad, especially since other OEMs like Samsung are promising upwards of 4 years, and don't even get me started on Apple. Still, for the price tag, I'll let it slide. The last major win by Google for the Pixel 6a is that they included their homemade Tensor chip. Like its predecessors, there's a lot that this budget tier 6a can handle. Despite it being just a 60Hz screen with 6GB of RAM, the Tensor did a lot of the heavy lifting and made this phone feel snappy, slick, and somewhat smooth. Actually, scratch that. I can't call any phone running at 60Hz smooth anymore. Once you've used a 90Hz, let alone a 120, it's hard to go back. Either way, the 6a had a great performance. It opened apps quickly, processed photos amazingly, and provided a somewhat reliable under-display fingerprint sensor. I mean, there were a good amount of misrecognitions, but when it did want to play nice, it unlocked the phone very fast. The only thing that I will say about the performance is that it's not a great option for gaming. After 30 minutes, the phone will get extremely hot to the touch and even start to lag. It's especially more noticeable on power-hungry games like Call of Duty Mobile. Now, it wouldn't be a Google Pixel A phone without mentioning some corners that Google had to cut to keep that price low. Perhaps the most easily noticed is the absence of a higher refresh rate. Now, I may get some backlash for this, but I honestly think 90Hz or even 120 would have been possible at this price range. I mean, the Galaxy A53 was able to slam a 120Hz display and it's selling for $100 less. Plus, the 6a is already using a similar display as the more expensive Pixel 6. And believe it or not, some Pixel 6a variants do secretly support 90Hz. To prove it, some smartphone enthusiasts were even able to manually enable 90Hz by simply installing a modified display driver. This brought 90Hz to life on the 6a devices. The only problem is that most other devices started to run into display issues like the screen going blank or the display calibration being bad or tearing due to VSync problems. It's honestly not worth the hassle, but it's crazy to see that Google could have worked this out. Another thing that I miss is the 3.5mm headphone jack. It was one of the last few phones to still carry one, and Google thought it was time to finally get rid of it. I can't say that I blame them for moving on, but I did find it useful for plugging into some of my more premium headsets that weren't wireless, like the Meze Liric. An extremely beautiful closed-back headset with premium materials and cutting-edge audio technology embodied into a frame that is so artistic and unique. Meze was kind enough to send over these headphones for me to try out and recommend, and overall it's the best sounding headset that I've ever used. It's also the most expensive headset that I've ever held. But if you're an audio enthusiast that is extremely picky with their sound, the Liric is a great choice. It's perfect for my everyday workflows like when I edit videos, since its various drivers and frames do a fantastic job at preserving the original clarity and emotion of a song or track. Plus, its oversized ear cups and its light padded headband make it extremely comfortable to use for hours on end. It's even portable, coming with a case so I can have high fidelity listening on the go. If you're looking for something a lot cheaper but still want that perfect natural sound, the 99 Classics are a great alternative. My favorite is the walnut gold because it just looks so elegant and premium, and I even reviewed it a while back. So if you're interested in checking out these headsets, I'll include the link at the top of the description and a discount code to get 20% off for the 99 Classics. You'll also get a bundle promotion when purchasing the Liric, which comes with a free premium cable. Now the 6a is obviously the smallest out of Google's entire 6 series lineup, and even smaller than last year's Pixel 5a. It does make it more pocketable and friendlier to use with one hand, but it also means the battery is smaller. At 4410 mAh, it's got a smaller battery capacity than even last year's model. However, with the 60Hz panel and the efficient tensor chip on board, it still manages pretty respectable battery life. With light to even moderate use, I was easily able to make it through the entire day, usually ending at around 5 to 6 hours of screen time. Not bad, but not impressive, especially when compared to the Pixel 5a, which lasted me around 8 hours of screen on time. That's a lot. It just had a much bigger battery capacity and a more power efficient chipset. On the charging side, it's another big miss by Google. Even though it has a plastic back, the 6a still didn't come with any wireless charging. But this is just something that most OEMs don't include inside their mid-tier devices to keep the cost low. It's a bummer, and it can be a big deal breaker to most, but I honestly didn't mind. What did grind my gears though, is that the charging is capped at just 18 watts. So you better not forget to charge your phone overnight, because charging it back up will be close to 2 hours. Either way, that's how the Pixel 6a has been treating me for the past month or so. At $450, it's the same price as the Pixel 5a when it first was released, and it didn't get a whole lot of changes. The only major ones that were easy to spot out were the design, the removal of the headphone jack, the change to the under-display fingerprint sensor, and the switch to the tensor chip. Some phones in this price range, like the Galaxy A53, also have a bit more to offer, like better battery life, higher refresh rate, and a better charging speed. But the Pixel software is hard to beat, especially considering how fast you'll receive updates. Those Pixel exclusive features are amazing, and the camera quality is way better than any other phone in this price range. So yes, I definitely recommend getting it if you're looking for the best bang for your buck at this price range. But there's also the consideration that you can pick up the Pixel 6 for $150 extra. You get a bigger, smoother display, a little more RAM, and a larger primary camera sensor to improve nighttime photography. Not to mention that when the Pixel 7 comes out, it'll become even cheaper. Either way, that's my full review of the Pixel 6a. Thank you for sticking to the end, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing so. Maybe drop a thumbs up if you enjoyed what you saw. Be sure to get subscribed with the notification bell turned on to get notified as soon as any more great content like this gets released on the channel, and it does every week. Or be sure to sign up on my Patreon page as well to get early access to these videos before they get released to the public. Either way, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Kapow!